From the Marquee Media Studio inside Mark Tank, it's the Mark Haney Show.
Yes, this is the Mark Haney Show on a mission to ignite the entrepreneurial revolution right here in the hometown we love. And we do that by building the Backyard Advantage, the most connected community in the world for local entrepreneurs. And it's based around this culture of love, right? Helping one another. And today on the show, we have Yvonne Pire. She owns a number of companies, and some in real estate, some in security, which I have a familiarization with. So we're going to be talking about that. But everybody needs an advantage. We all do. We need a personal advantage. I think we need an advantage in our careers and in business. And of course, I want to create one for the entrepreneurs of the Sacramento region. And so that's what we're working on. And so we do that by helping people to be inspired, by engineering wins for one another, but basically by helping each other. So today, with Yvonne coming on the show, she's going to share her story, and hopefully that inspires you to take a risk and go for it in your life. So welcome to the show, Yvonne.
Thank you.
So where do we start? Why don't we talk about your journey to entrepreneurship? Where you didn't just wake up one day an entrepreneur, you decided. What prompted that? And maybe just walk me along that path.
I had I would call a serial entrepreneur grandfather.
Aha.
I call him serial entrepreneur because he tried many companies and, did good at some, not so great at others. And he was the one that always told me that it's really important that I just create a, professional life for myself. Don't ever depend on a man, so I can take care of myself. So
yes.
I always knew that I wanted to have a company, but I didn't know what until it came, years after I separated from the Air Force.
Okay, so you grew up where, and then what led you to join the Air Force? Maybe we can go there, and then that could probably take us on our path to, starting your company.
All right. Well, I grew up everywhere.
Okay.
My mom counted it up one time. I actually moved 21 times by the time I was 16 years old.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So my mom had me at a very young age. She got pregnant with me when she was 16. So I was the oldest of my two brothers, and so we lived pretty dysfunctional life. I have since, I do speak on this topic quite a bit, but we grew up alcoholic family, moved around a lot of abuse. I was in and out of different foster homes for a period of time. And so very, very unstable upbringing. So that upbringing of going through that instability that I had of constantly changing homes and fathers and home environments. When I went into the Air Force really gave me that stability that I needed.
Was the Air Force kind of like an escape from that at some level?
It was.
How old were you when you joined the Air Force?
I joined before I even graduated high school.
Oh my goodness.
So in Texas, Texas is what I call home because that's where I graduated from high school, and that's, I spent the most time in Texas.
Well, they have bases in San Antonio. Is that where you were? Anywhere near there?
Yes, yeah. I actually ended up being stationed at all 4 of the Air Force bases before they shut down.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Okay. And so I might circle back around on the difficult upbringing, because a lot of times that not only does that lead to some decisions right in there, but there's wisdom and perspective now that you have, having that been so long ago. So maybe we'll circle back around to what lessons learned and, what that maybe there was a silver lining in there somewhere, and obviously you're speaking on that topic, so we'd love to learn what you speak about. But so you get out of the Air. What was your MOS, or what was your specialty in the Air Force?
I went in when I signed up, I just said I'll take whatever. Didn't know what I wanted to do, and of course I feel like that was for me the best path because God put me where I was meant to be, and I ended up becoming a security police specialist in 1 year after they started letting women back into the security police forces. So in the Air Force, they had several years where women were not even allowed to be security police specialists. So I joined 1 year after that. And so I was one of the few women in the security police forces in the Air Force back when I joined.
And I can imagine in that kind of scenario that time in society and in the Air Force, there must have been people that they might not have wanted women in there. It's like, oh no, what's she doing here?
It was very much like that, especially because, so when you walk into a new squadron, they size you up immediately. So a man,
and you're a smaller woman.
Yes.
So you're not like, big Amazon woman that, looks physically intimidating.
Yes.
But
when I initially joined the Air Force, I could barely run the required miles. I could barely do the physical part of it, but it's mind over matter. And I just put my mind to it. And I went from not being able to keep up with the men to, in the Air Force, your security police training, you train with the Air Force and then you go and train with the Army. So by the time I got to my Army training and by the time I graduated from Air Base Ground Defense, I was at the front of the pack, because we go on these long hikes and you have to you're all carrying the same weight of backpacks, you're all carrying an M16, I learned all the same weapons that the men learned,
And how much did you weigh at the time? I'm trying to picture this, like 110 pounds or something like that, carrying with a 70-pound backpack or something.
I did gain weight in the Air Force, so I was like 120.
My gosh.
Yeah, my backpack and my weapon and everything was almost as much as I was.
Oh my goodness. Yes. My son was in the Marine Corps. And he's not a huge guy, but he's a guy. Mm-hmm. But I remember hearing the stories of all the stuff that he had to carry around. I'm like, oh my goodness, that's a backbreaker. So to have someone, a smaller person and a woman, that had to be, you did no injuries from that though.
No, actually I got physically stronger and mentally stronger through that. My only challenge, my biggest challenge was the Army, the Air Base Ground Defense was in New Jersey in February, and I hate the cold. So we had to dig our own bivouac, and we had to create our own bunkers, and so that was in the snow, in the cold. That was my least favorite part for sure.
Okay, so you're in the police area, so you get out, and now you own a very significant security company. So maybe walk us through the pathway from leaving the Air Force and then launching a security business.
So I was in the Air Force 6 years. 4 of those 6 years was as a security police specialist. The last 2, I cross-trained and became a paralegal, which was amazing because as a paralegal, I learned a lot about government contracts. And I was fortunate enough to, when I worked at the JAG, I was working with other government contracts. And so that was a great experience for me. I got out of that and went back, finished my bachelor's degree, and then worked for a security integration and IT company. They were a small business themselves, woman-owned. There's a certification called 8A certification, and they have that 8A certification. I worked directly for the CEO of that company. Prior to that, I was also working just back when Microsoft was really big. So when it was first coming out, so I was teaching a lot of Microsoft classes.
Microsoft's still big.
Well, I mean, you don't have to take classes for it anymore. I was teaching Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Access.
It's more commonplace today.
Yeah, it's more common. You don't need the classes anymore. So I taught that. So between my my time teaching and then also combined with working with this other small business integrator, whenever I left that, I was running a market training center. Remember CompUSA? Yeah, I was running 3 market training centers, and then I decided to leave that and start my own business. So I started Truffles Technologies back in 2001 as a sole proprietor and incorporated in 2002.
Wow, so that's been 20 plus years, 22 years-ish. Tell me about that business. Is it, you guys sell into the government world, coincidentally, but maybe walk us through that. What does the business look like today, and maybe what were some of the earlier struggles?
So early on, we really were more of a staffing company because I was really good at government contracts and proposals. And because I was, or am a woman-owned small business, a service-disabled veteran-owned small business, and at the time I had the SBA certification. It's a certification you can only have for 9 years. And so because of that, we grew fast. I mean, we grew from 0 to over 23 million within 6 years. And, we got the challenges where we got too diverse.
Okay.
So the big challenges that we were we were winning IT staffing contracts, security contracts. We were winning. We got into language intel analysts, and hiring training linguists. So back in 2015, made the decision to split the company and really double down on security, because I had been doing security work prior to that, but we'd get one really big job and then another big job, but it was like maybe 2-3 jobs a year. And it was 2015 was right when all of the major manufacturers of security equipment were starting to consolidate, and they were going to be letting people go from being a value-added reseller if you weren't selling enough. And plus, I also saw that in the government world, IT staffing was becoming a commodity. All the big businesses were really taking off, but security was wide open and growing in the federal government space.
Yeah. So on your the staffing side of the business, did you sell that off, or what happened with that company?
Split it off with the business partner that I had at the time. He took half the business, and I took the other half the business.
Gotcha. And then you began focusing on the security side. And is that physical security, like electronics, and like the people that know me know I've been in the security camera business for a long time. And so we ran, as you mentioned earlier, parallel lives at some of you're selling into the government, and I had 5 companies and selling all over the place, basically selling to everybody, not the government though, really too much.
Well, we used to buy from Northern Video.
Okay.
So that's why when we were talking about Northern Video earlier, we bought from Northern Video is one of the first, distributors that we bought from before all the consolidation that started happening. It was kind of funny knowing you all these years, but not really knowing you, because
we're each other.
We're the only 2 security companies in Rockland,
right?
Specifically in Rockland. But you were always casinos, and I've always federal.
Yeah, now we're only casinos. Well, I have 2 companies left, and we're only in casinos, so we don't really. I don't think we have any government contracts. It's really not our thing. But you're an expert in that world.
Yeah.
And I think did you feel like narrowing your niche was a good decision?
It was. It very much was. I still believe in diversification. Some people I think niche down a little too much. So we do still have diversification, but what we primarily focus on is, our tagline is we're securing critical infrastructures. And so I focus on critical infrastructures. I went through a period of time where I was like, I'm going to try selling in the commercial market space around here and start, I'm pretty proud of the fact that the only commercial job I really ever had was the Golden One Center.
Oh yeah, just a little tiny job like that.
Yeah.
What kind of cameras did they put in there? Is that Panasonic?
They did back then. It was Hanwha. So Samsung.
Oh, that's right.
They were Samsung at the time.
Okay. Yeah. Trying to think back to that was. Yeah. I wasn't in the day to day when Golden One went up in terms of. I think we had exited some of my companies by then, so we weren't really involved. But I was always curious, like what's going on, because I know they're the most. They're known as the most technologically forward-leaning arena in the world, at least at the time.
Yeah. Well, and because it was such a large undertaking, it was large businesses that were the primes. We were a sub underneath one of the small businesses, and so we did all. My team put in all the cameras, all the access control and IDS for Golden One and Kempton Sawyer.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That's there's got to be a lot of cameras. How many cameras was that? That's going to be thousands.
I should
1,000?
know. It was a lot. I don't remember now, but it was a lot.
Okay, good. So that business is doing well, and security is never going to go away. It's not becoming a less violent society. We are more appreciative of physical security and even manpower and people power in keeping us safe. So that's really a good business. As I mentioned earlier, I believe everybody needs a competitive advantage and kind of an edge. Do you feel like in that business you have an edge at all?
I do. When it comes to that business, the edge I have is because we're so good in federal government, because there's a lot of security companies out there. You can from IT companies can put in cameras, security companies. So I don't want to say anybody, but it's not too difficult to install cameras. It's a little bit more difficult for access control or IDS. IDS is intrusion detection, for those who don't know. I know you do. But I feel like our competitive advantage is because we're so good at the federal, we do nationwide contracts. So what makes Trofholz Technologies is my security company. What makes us so unique is that we're a small business integrator, but we do nationwide contracts. So, for example, my largest client is the Navy SEALs. So we secure all the Navy SEAL bases from Virginia Beach to Stennis, Coronado, all the way out to Guam and Alaska. So
being able to handle a contract like that eliminates a lot of the competition, if you will, because not everybody can handle that kind of contract.
Correct. So we're small. We've been in business long enough. I mean, I'm probably one of the oldest Linnell resellers out there, because we've been selling Linnell. Linnell is one of the top two federal government access control systems.
Okay.
And so I've been selling Linnell for more than 15 years. And we, as a small business, of course, you have that competitive advantage because the federal government is mandated to do business with small businesses and especially service-disabled veterans. So we have that advantage there. But the bigger advantage is the fact that we're a small that can operate like a large. So that's our competitive advantage there.
And so, ours is, our security company has certain similarities. We're not a small business, but because we do casinos, and let's say a casino wants 5,000 cameras, that can be a very complex system to set up, maybe like a Golden One. And especially if they've got an existing system and they want to put in a new system and then the cutover with no downtime. Not everybody is capable of doing those kind of things, especially at scale and especially all over the country. So it takes an interesting workforce to be able to do that. So I have to imagine your team is phenomenal.
I love my team. I really put a lot of focus on training the team I have and taking care of the team I have. So I have employees that have, on the short side, have worked for me for more than 5 years, but a lot of them that have been working for me 10, 15 years.
Wow. Okay, so what kind of learnings or advice might you have for our audience that maybe is moving into a leadership position? You've obviously figured it out. You've got loyal employees and the business is thriving. Any pointers or keys to becoming a great leader?
When you're specifically referring to leadership, I think the most important thing in leadership is truly valuing your team, seeing them for who they really are. The number one mistake I've always made as a leader is I always see the good in people, which should be a good thing, but sometimes you can take that to an extreme. So because
it clouds your vision.
It clouds my vision. Yes. So I always see the good in people. I'm always because I'm an underdog, I'm always wanting to help the underdog. And so one of the things you do have to be careful of as a leader is you want to inspire them to push themselves to their limits, but you don't want to push them past their limits. I always say push them to their edge. And once you push them to their edge of their limits, now you really know what they're made of. And I tend to push my team to a point that they don't know that they're capable of, but I see it in them. And so that's why I say really see your team, really know your team enough that you see potential in them before they even see the potential in them. Flip side of that is don't put them into positions that they're really not ready for. Or, I'm a big believer in the traction and entrepreneurial operating system. And a key phrase in there is make sure you put people in positions where they get it, they want it, and they have the capacity to do it. And it's the hardest thing, I think, in leadership to do.
Okay, so they get it, they want it, and they have the capacity to do it. Okay, that's really, it sounds so basic, but there's times, I think, for all managers, all leaders, that maybe they don't check all those boxes when they start promoting people.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
And I'm notorious for over-promoting.
I have been there myself, so I'm not going to throw any stones.
Yeah.
What's the vision for Trofholz?
Trofholz right now, we've kind of remained a little stagnant over the last, and I say stagnant only because over the last 7 years is when I really decided to double down on security, and I stopped doing as much of the staffing contracts over the last 7 years. And so I really focused on operations. So the last 7 years, we've been focused on building our operations team, making sure that we're really solid and we can take care of our existing clients. Now the future is we're ready to get back into business development. I was at the large security show this past week in Vegas and talking to large businesses, and ready to partner with large businesses. And we're ready, one of the large businesses asked me, "Are you ready to go to Europe?" And I said, "We're ready."
I love Europe. Okay, so I have to ask you though, what's it like being around Navy SEALs? So obviously you were in the military, and we all have this, vision in our mind of what the Navy SEALs is like, but you're there doing their electronics. Do you get to see them, doing all their workouts and all that dangerous stuff that they do?
Seen some of it. The coolest thing ever was going to their training site down in Coronado. That was pretty cool because that is a secure site. We couldn't take pictures or anything like that, but it was pretty cool to go in there and you see the tank that they train in. You see everything. It was pretty amazing.
Gosh. Very exciting. Well, I know you've diversified. You use that term, and I toured your facility more recently. Your facility is called the Rising Zone?
That's the new business.
That's the new business.
Yes. So they're two different businesses.
Okay, tell me about what that is, because you and I are walking another parallel path at some level. So describe this business, because it's really intriguing to me, the differentiation that you've created.
So Trofholz is, because I've been running it for 23 years and I have a great team, it's kind of running itself. I'm still very involved, and I definitely am more so on the business development, everything else. But I started the Rising Zone. We just opened up a year ago, so we've only been open a year, and it's more focused on wellness. And after being in the military and then being in a male-dominated security and IT industry, I have spent my lifetime operating in my masculine and trying to prove myself. I'm a tiny girl, but I'm strong physically and emotionally, and problem is that you can push yourself to an edge. And so what I found myself not taking care of myself physically, emotionally, spiritually. And so I went through quite a bit of my own personal challenges, starting back in 2015. And when I went through all those, I just started seeing that there's a different way to operate. So it started with me treating my team differently at Trofholz, where I was really engaged. That's where I really started engaging them more. And so a lot of the lessons that I learned from there, I wanted to take into this new business. So the Rising Zone is, right now, it's a wellness co-working and event center. And so again, kind of on the parallel paths, it's a co-working center similar to Growth Factory. We are wanting to help build businesses up that are there in our space, just like the Growth Factory. The difference is that I really want to focus on integrating their personal life and their work life together. So I have a huge focus on just wellness. And when I say wellness, I'm saying physical wellness, emotional wellness, spiritual wellness, and of course, financial wellness.
You bet. So I walked into your facility, and there's on the ground, there's like a river, and each of the river can be like a pathway that you follow. And so you've got this really big building. I think it's 20,000 square feet. 22,000. Okay, so I knew it was pretty big. And then you have like zones or areas of the building that are set up for these different kinds of, growth or healing, if you will. So walk me through what that looks like.
So I'll start with the river.
Okay.
So I call it the TRZ River, the river of life. And the reason the river was so important for me to have on the floor of the Rising Zone, so as soon as you walk through the door, I wanted people to walk through the door and have this feeling of just ease. Just have this instant, immediate feeling of ease. And what the river represents is the river represents life. And when you're fighting, because we spend so much time talking about planning and goals and all this strict stuff, but when you really are in flow with life and you follow the flow of whatever it is that you're meant to do or whatever it is you need at the time, life just goes smoother. When you don't follow the flow, life is a lot more challenging.
It is.
So what's cool about the river is that the river goes, so everything downstairs, the zones you're referring to, is the rising zone has 3 primary zones. We have the strength zone, which is to the right. It's
Really cool workout area.
Yep, super masculine side of the building, on the right side of the building, and it's cool gym, recovery room, cold plunge, sauna. And so the river will take you to the gym. The river will take you to the recovery room. And so if you're feeling like that's what you need that day, or at that time in your life, then you follow the river to that. Then the river goes to the left, which is more it's called the Zen zone. And the Zen zone is for the people who they're ready to take care of themselves just emotionally, mentally, and relax. So the vibe when you walk in there, you go to the right, it's like fun music and it's kind of vibing. And then you go to the left, and the Zen zone's quiet.
Well, that's interesting to me. So because everybody's household is different. So my wife and I are empty nesters, and I've created what I call it the Renaissance room. It's basically my own little home gym, and I can go in there and shut the door and nobody bugs me. I think a lot of people don't have that. A lot of people don't. They're like, I got the kids, I got stuff. It's like an escape where I can get my thoughts together, remember who I am deep down inside, breathe, if you will. People don't have those zones.
They don't. And you can create this in your own life, but I did not. I was very focused for 15 years, we'll say. 15 years, I was growing a company and being a mom. And all I cared about was, financial success with my business and being the best mom I could possibly be. I raised 4 kids during the time of building this business. And so that was my life. I wasn't taking care of myself physically. And when you don't take care of yourself physically, of course, that causes problems. But when you don't take care of yourself emotionally and spiritually, that actually causes more problems, because emotional trauma not dealt with causes physical ailments. And so that's really the focus I have with the Zen Zone, is that the Zen Zone is there to heal you. And even at Truffles, I'm very transparent about, I want people talking about what do they have going on personally that's challenging their lives. We've spent, for generations, it was taboo to talk about your personal life. And, everybody has personal problems. Everybody does, but we don't talk about it. We hide it. And so what I want to do with the Rising Zone is I really want to educate people to realize that it is so important to be authentic, be real. Don't show up to work and be like, I'm good, when you're not.
Yeah, that's interesting. That vulnerability, it's healthy for both sides of, for the, let's call it the listener, and for the person that's expressing themselves. I'm in part of something called Entrepreneurs Organization, and it's kind of, I think of it as like AA for entrepreneurs, right? It's this group of people that get together and, share everything together and in terms of like what's going on in their life, but it's all super confidential. And I have to imagine it's really therapeutic for the people that are in it. Now, when I go into the Zen Zone, I was sort of picturing alone time, which I love personally, but you're representing it closer to a community.
A community, okay. Yeah, because we can all do a lot of healing on our own at home by ourselves, but there's something about coming together. So we have what's called the Phoenix Room, and the Phoenix Room is for breath work, meditation, yoga, and the number one thing that I focus on is breath work, the power of breath work. I spent 15 years thinking I had asthma, just to find out I have shallow breathing, and it's anxiety because I'm all breathing up here in the chest. And I'll catch myself, like just before coming in here, I was like, oh, I'm getting nervous. And I felt myself breathing in my chest, and I purposely pushed it down to my belly. And so breath work, there's so many different forms of breath work. There's the basic, just, breath work that you can do, in the middle of the workday. Just before I started talking to you, I just like, breathing in deep breaths, but into the belly. The more you go into the belly, the more you can relax yourself. Breathing through your nose drops you into your parasympathetic nervous system, whereas when you breathe in and out your mouth, you're in your sympathetic nervous system, and so it's like all these different tricks. But the breath work that I am the biggest believer in is some people call it holotropic breath work, and others call it psychedelic breath breath work. But what that type of breath work does is it's actually very healing. It can pull out emotional trauma. Some people will cry and scream during it, and others just go into like amazing, meditative states.
Wow.
So it's pretty powerful.
Okay, so I want to learn a little bit more about that, but so you and I, the other parallel path that I'm going to like cross section across this is you and I both go to East Wind Yoga.
Yes.
And you're saying you go mainly on the weekends. I go basically every day, so I'm there a lot. But we learned how to breathe there, but I don't even know. I just breathe it. My thought is I'm breathing in deep. I'm holding it in. I'm getting oxygen all over my body, throughout my body, and then I'm breathing it out. And I've learned how to I'll call it control my breathing through pain. And because pain tolerance is a big part of what is needed at East Wind Yoga, because it's not easy. It's hot yoga, but you have to hold these positions for long periods of time, or even go through cardio type things that are very, very difficult. And so pain tolerance and breathing in pain tolerance is what I've learned over the last several years. But I'm really curious about this psychedelic thing. I want to go on one of those trips. What happens now? It can be a little bit like a psychedelic trip.
Well, because you're breathing in and out your mouth, and you're breathing in really deep in your belly, then your chest, and then you let it out. So you're just going and it's fast. It's different music. Everybody does it. We have different guides do it different ways, and I've done. My initial experiences with it was very tribal. I loved it. I did it. My first time doing breath work was in Costa Rica, and it was like to this amazing tribal shaman type music. And it was like, and you breathe in, out, and then you just keep going. And it's a natural way for your body. You take in so much breath. You're oxygenating. I can always say the word. It's hard to say. You oxygenate your body.
Either, so
it's such a hard word to say.
We all know what you mean.
Yeah. So you're taking in so much air that you literally can kind of transcend into other states. You sometimes get like this. Your body will tense up. You get like what they call tetany hands. Wow. It's pretty amazing.
And you guys do that at your place?
Yeah. I've bring different breathwork instructors in. We actually have one coming up the end of the month, or actually a week and a half from now. Yeah.
I think people discount. I did for most of my life, breathing, just breathe. But there really is a technique.
How you breathe is so important. How you breathe can completely change how you function. So,
okay, so we've gone through two of the different phases. So we have the
Zen zone.
Zen zone. We have the workout area.
Yeah.
What's that one called again?
Yeah. Let me finish on the Zen zone though. So we have the Phoenix room, which is like the transformation room. We have 4 different treatment rooms with like massage therapists, and we have an esthetician. We have IV therapy, and then we have the energy enhancement system, which is amazing. The energy enhancement system I think was closed when you came in, but the energy enhancement system, it's a 24-unit system that when you sit in there, it just drops you into just deep states of relaxation. People go in there, and even people like myself who have a hard time sleeping or relaxing, you can go in there and you just, I didn't sleep much last night, so I was like, oh, I better go sit. I'm going to go sit in the energy enhancement system for an hour before coming here because I didn't get much sleep. An hour in there feels like a 3-hour nap.
Okay.
And then I've spent the night in there, and it feels, it's amazing. So everybody knows that, any doctor you go to will tell you the number one thing you need to do to heal your body is sleep. And it just helps you drop into deep states of rest and really heal. There's a lot more to it than that, but the technology is amazing.
Okay, so Zen room, workout areas,
strength zone, Zen zone, work zone.
Work zone. Okay, so
that's upstairs.
What's work? That doesn't sound fun.
Well, hey, we make it fun.
Okay, so what's that look like?
So work zone is all upstairs. So upstairs we have offices that people, rent, and they maintain their day-to-day business there. So we have offices, and then we also have what we call our flex space that we have events. So we have the flex space area. You can work there just by the day. We do part-time in the flex space only because we like to have events in there. And so you can fit, just over 50 people in the event space. And then we have a conference room for like 20 people. And then we have a collaboration room, which is my favorite room because it's business planning and it's more intimate. It's, you see, it's like 8 to 10 people.
Yeah. And you have some very successful businesses in there too. I know one of the construction companies I had heard of before was in there.
Wolf Construction is in there.
Yeah.
They were our first people to move in.
Oh, okay.
They started in the office right across from us, right across from my office. So I have my library, which is where you and I talked, but my library is just a quieter area over by my office. And so they started off there, and then they grew and they moved into a suite. We actually, everybody says, she says, we don't ever want to leave here. And I said, well, if you don't ever leave here, that means I'm not doing my job. You're not growing.
Yeah.
Wow, but some people want to stay that way. But.
Yeah. 100%.
So we've already got somebody that started Prime Lending, started their business there, and he's already outgrown us.
Wow.
So
that's great.
I mean, sad to see him go, but
But
happy
you
to
were
see
part of that growth.
Happy to see him grow.
It is so. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons why I like doing the investing and the co-working spaces and stuff, is to see people grow. It's really rewarding to be some small part of that journey. And I also think that ambitious people tend to, I think it's an infectious kind of thing. When somebody's really working hard or really, kicking butt, it sort of it inspires me to want to be a better person and want to be a better, leader and so on. So
that's where I get my fuel.
Yeah.
I get my fuel from seeing other people succeed. It started with Trofholz and my team, and seeing. I mean, one of my favorite success stories is I have a young lady that started as a project coordinator at Trofholz. She went from project coordinator to project manager to program manager to she's the one leading all my nationwide Navy contracts, and now she's a director in the company.
Wow!
So to see her grow, and I've had many other stories like that. That's just kind of the most obvious one, but. It makes you that's what fills me up, and now to be able to do that for other business, and other entrepreneurs, that's what I really want to do.
Okay, so I'm going to kind of maybe this tail end of the show. So you've got something really inspiring there, and these parallel paths is really interesting. We're both Rockland businesses, and so a lot of stuff. Now you mentioned something that this would be not a parallel path. Going through I had a good upbringing. My mom and dad were, hard on me, but in a way that I probably needed it. But you had, and we moved a couple of times around Roseville, 4 or 5 times, but nothing like what you're describing in terms of, challenging childhood, situation. How does all that circle back around to you now as an adult? Does that still affect you, or have you dealt with all that trauma?
Well, you're never done dealing with it.
Okay.
So when you have trauma, one of the things I've learned through my journey of healing is that everybody has trauma, even people from good upbringings and happy households.
I don't have trauma. No, I'm kidding.
Some sort of trauma. It could be, my brother took my Legos and that pissed me off.
Older brother used to beat me up all the time.
Right.
I'm still messed up over that.
Yeah. So everybody has some sort of trauma. For me, though, I did have very severe trauma. I hid it for many, many years because my family knew about it, obviously, and my significant other knew about it because it always affected my relationships. But I buried it and stuffed it down inside of me, and that is everybody's life and their upbringing, it's what creates who you are, in your future. And you can let your past destroy you, or you can let your past uplift you. And for me, I have always been more of an optimist and always thought about, well, there's got to be something better out there. So growing up, I used to be a very make-believe person. I had to detach myself from my body because I was abused, in a not so good way for 5 years. From the age of 5 to 10, I was seriously abused. And what happens when you're abused as a young child is that you detach from your body. It's a survival technique. And so when you do that detaching, then you can kind of create your own worlds. And so I just always, for me, I just always envisioned a better life, my uncle and my cousins had this amazing life, and I just always was like, I'm going to be like them. And so I took the route of success and trying to, make myself better, be the best mom I could, give my kids everything I didn't have. So I went that route. But what I did over that time period of 20 years is that because I buried everything inside of me. So when I went through a very ugly, horrible divorce, that's when it all came out. Because then that was when I really had to heal. And that's when the real authentic Yvonne came out. And that was back in 2015. And I opened myself up to my employees saw me almost have a breakdown, and that's where the beginnings of the Rising Zone and the thoughts of the Rising Zone even came. I mean, I wasn't thinking about building a new business at the time, but I wouldn't have started the Rising Zone, and I wouldn't have started even Trofholz if it wasn't for my past.
This might sound like an odd question, but it may be obvious to everybody, but why did you bury it so much when maybe now you know that uncovering some of that stuff is very therapeutic, but you obviously buried it?
Well, when I say I buried it, I should back up. I went to counseling at different times. I went to counseling, when we first went into foster care, and then I went into counseling in my early 20s, a little bit in my 30s. So I had done counseling many times through the years, but I just wasn't open about it. I just didn't want to share it because for me, talking about my past, I was reliving it. And it was because I hadn't really healed it. The very first thing that helped me let it go was there's a treatment called EMDR. EMDR is a type of hypnosis. And EMDR is, you're sitting there watching something go back and forth. There's also ways we can do with sound. But my therapist took me back into, a couple of my major traumatic events. And, there was a time period, when my mom almost killed herself. I remembered every detail, and every time I used to talk about it, and that was the day that we were taken off to foster care. I used to, when I would think of that time period, my whole body would hurt. Like I literally felt it in me. There's a book out there called The Body Keeps Score. And it's so true. Trauma is trapped in your body, which is why I'm a believer in breath work, because it's a way to move the trauma out of your body. And so for me, when I say I buried it, I wasn't public about it. I became public about it because of Sierra College. I always donated to their veterans programs and their prior foster youth programs. And I was so into the foster youth program that finally the head of philanthropy there at Sierra College asked me. Is that Sumball? Yes. Yes, Sumball. I know her. So Sumball finally asked me, and it was the first time I ever shared with anybody in my professional life that I had been in foster care.
And that was public in front of a group.
Yeah, it was in front of a couple of other people at the time, but then I told her I'll never go to lunch with her again because I know that means she's going to ask me to speak somewhere. So the very first time I ever shared my story publicly was at the Sierra College commencement speech. Oh my God. So I was asked to do the Sierra College commencement speech in 2017, I think, because they had their largest prior foster youth graduating class graduating from Sierra College. At the same time, they had a large veterans group graduating. And so it was pretty funny because Willie Duncan, right?
Willie, yeah.
Yeah, Willie, he introduced me my professional bio. Then I shared my story in a very, I shared it in as positive as you can share that kind of past. But I spin it around to be, for me, I always tell everybody, your past does not dictate your future. And so whatever your past was, you deal with your past, you accept your past. It's part of who you are. And once you truly accept it and deal with it and go through the emotion, the road to healing has obviously been long, but once you accept it and you heal through it and you get past it, it just becomes part of who you are, and it makes you more authentic for the future and helping others. And so it was funny. I shared my story, and then he comes back up and he's like, "So Yvonne just shared her story for the first time publicly amongst your closest 1,000 friends."
Yeah, wow. So, that must have been a scary moment at some level.
It was also liberating. I found that I ended up appreciating and saying thank you to Sonabal I just said her.
All the body,
Yeah,
Sunball, all the body.
Sunball, yeah. I said thank you to her because her asking me to do that commencement speech and share with so many people, it freed me. It liberated me, you know, and it's part of who I am, and hiding parts of who you are makes it impossible to be your authentic self. And so I appreciate that she pushed me. Like I said, I do for others. She pushed me to my edge, and I jumped off in a good way instead of falling off.
Well, congratulations. So last question, and maybe I'll make it kind of like a two-part question. What did I not ask you? And then what maybe words of wisdom beyond the nuggets you've already shared might you have for entrepreneurial audience?
So as far as the entrepreneurial audience, I'll speak to that first. From an entrepreneurial audience, I say, you know, don't be afraid to take your chances. You know, everybody was asking me like, oh my God, you've taken so many chances, you know, in your life. But, you know, there's, I'm going blank on the quote, but the thing that you fear the most usually brings the biggest rewards. And I'm not remembering who said that. Yeah. I'll have to circle back to it. But just don't be afraid to take chances. So my advice to most entrepreneurs is take the chance, you know, jump in. You know, I built Trofholz in a conservative way, you know, over time, and it was, you know, incremental growth. And I mean, we grew fast, but it wasn't like a huge leap of faith other than the initial investment. The Rising Zone, huge risk. I mean, buying a 22,000 square foot building, starting a building. I'm not in the wellness industry. So I was trying to open up a wellness. So now I'm meeting with doctors and chiropractors and, you know, all people from different wellness industries, but it's because I believe in it. So I really believe in it. So that's my number one piece of advice to entrepreneurs is don't be afraid to just take the risk and try. But don't, let me take the word try out. Don't be afraid to jump and be all in. So it's about if you're going to do it, be all in. And, you know, so that would be my second piece of advice is don't be afraid to try. And when you do decide to try, be all in.
Love it.
And then on the personal side, you know, because of what I'm doing at the Rising Zone, I really, really encourage everybody, personally and professionally, really look at your past traumas and broach them, heal them, you know, sit with it. Don't be afraid to, you know, cry about it. And with a more intentional, and intention is a key word, but the more intentional you are about healing yourself and looking at yourself and what's holding you back, then the better you are in the future. And so kind of my words to everybody is just live an intentional life. And part of that is getting to know who you are and what's holding you back, and then you can move forward.
I love it. Well, congratulations on all your success. And thank you for sharing your message with the audience and with me. It's inspirational. I think it gives us some things to think about that I definitely believe in. And so really appreciate you. And I look forward to knowing you better.
Yes. Thank you.
You bet.
Appreciate having you on.
Thanks for watching today's show. My goal for every episode is that you find a takeaway, something tangible you can use in your business today. And if you have a comment about a favorite takeaway, feel free to put it in the box below. And if you have a topic that you'd like me to bring up on the show, don't forget to let me know. And also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel if you want to learn more about entrepreneurship. Because at Haney Biz, we are always by your side.